Hi there, my name is Mrs. Bennett and I am your guest reader for tonight. We are reading chapter 9 of Dog Days. Chapter 9 starts on page 113 and I am joined by Ruff, so he's gonna read with us tonight. Richard is sitting on his front porch tossing a tennis ball up in the air. Darnell is just leaving on his bike. He gives Gavin a quick hi and then he's off. "What's up?" Richard asks. "What are those for?" He points to the stack of flyers in Gavin's hand. "Carlotta is still lost. We're posting these around the neighborhood. Want to help?" "Okay," Richard says, "but I have to get permission." "Can I have something to drink? I'm thirsty." "Yeah, sure." Gavin's never been in Richard's house before. He's surprised to see how messy it is. Maybe it's because there are a lot of boys in Richard's family. There's Richard, Darnell in 5th grade, Jamal in 7th, and Roland in the 9th grade. Dishes are piled in the sink. There are soccer jerseys draped over the kitchen chairs. A basketball sits in the corner. Cereal boxes are left out in the middle of the table. Gavin thinks of the things his mother would say if she walked into their kitchen and it looked like that. He can just hear the shock in her voice, all the fussing she'd do. Richard finds a clean glass and fills it with water. Gavin gulps it down gratefully while Richard goes off to ask for permission to help with the flyers. Once they're back outside on the porch, Richard says, "Wait here, I'm going to get my scooter from out back." "But I don't have my scooter," Gavin says. "I'll get my skateboard. You can use that." Gavin sits down on the step to wait. He looks up the street in one direction and then the other. Way down at the end of the block on the other side of the street, he sees 2 girls from his class. The mean girl Deja and that other girl. He forgets her name. They're each walking a dog. It's funny, but one of the dogs looks a little bit like Carlotta. It has almost the same color fur, but maybe darker, he thinks. Deja is walking the other dog. It has a small, thin body and long legs, and a pointy face. He watches for a bit and then turns his attention to a guy across the street washing his car. It's a black car with shiny pipes coming out of the back and some spooky-looking hubcaps. Gavin decides he's going to get a car like that when he gets to be that guy's age. He looks up the street again. The girls with the dog that looks like Carlotta have gotten closer. Gavin stands up and shields his eyes. "Wait a minute." As Deja and her friend approach, he sees one of the little dogs pull at the leash just like Carlotta used to do. Then the dog stops to sniff the grass. The nicer girl, Nikki, he now remembers, has to tug her along, the same way he used to have to do with Carlotta. Slowly it begins to dawn on Gavin. That little dog is Carlotta. What are they doing with her? At that moment, Richard comes around the side of the house on his scooter with his skateboard under his arm. Lay down. "That's Carlotta," Gavin exclaims to him. "What?" Richard asks. He looks confused. "Those girls have Aunt Myrtle's dog. That's Carlotta." He points down the block at Deja and Nikki. "How come they've got your aunt's dog?" Richard asks. "I don't know," Gavin says. He runs to the curb, looks both ways, then crosses the street to meet the girls. Carlotta seems just as happy prancing along or stopping in her tracks to sniff at the grass as she was when Gavin walked her. He can't believe it. He hurries to them and the bossy one, Deja, frowns in recognition. What did he ever do to her? She takes the leash out of Nikki's hands and pulls Carlotta to her as Gavin approaches. "Where'd you get that dog?" he says when he's close enough to be heard. "Why?" Deja asks. "Because that's not your dog." He points at Carlotta. "How do you know?" the nicer girl asks in a quiet voice. "That's my aunt's dog. She got out of our yard yesterday and we've been looking all over for her." He looks down at Carlotta, who still seems perfectly pleased to be in the possession of people who are complete strangers. He finds himself annoyed. It's as if she's some kind of traitor. The other dog is trying to pull Deja toward a candy wrapper on the grass. "How do we know that's true?" Deja asks. Richard has crossed the street and joined the group. Now he adds, "That is his aunt's dog. He's been walking that dog after school every day this week." Well, then how come she's acting like you're a stranger? Deja asks. Gavin looks down at Carlotta. Carlotta, he says. The dog pays him no mind. She's back to sniffing at the grass. Carlotta, he says again. See, Deja says, she doesn't even know you. Okay, then, where did you get this dog? Gavin challenges her. Before Deja can open her mouth, the other girl says, we happened to save this dog's life. She was almost going to get hit by a car, and we stopped her before she crossed in front of it. Anyway, my parents said that she's a stray, just like Deja's dog, Miss Precious Penelope. She didn't even have a collar, and they said I could keep her if no one claimed her, and we're going to take her to the vet for her shots and stuff. Nikki, you don't have to tell him all that. It's just then that Gavin realizes he's left proof that the dog and his aunt's on Richard's porch. Again, he looks both ways down the empty street and then dashes across. He gathers the flyers and hurries back to the group. Look at this, he says, holding up a flyer close to Deja's nose. She bats at it and backs away, but she reads it, and her friend Nikki reads it too. So here's the flyer, and it says, have you seen this dog? Her name is Carlotta, and she is the beloved companion of Mrs. Myrtle Roberts. She has orange-brown fur and was not wearing her collar when she ran off on Friday afternoon. She's been missing for the last 24 hours. If you see her or know where she is, please contact Myrtle Roberts at 555-3423. Under the paragraph is the picture of Carlotta. She has a jumbo pink bow in her hair. Nikki and Deja stare at it. They look down at Carlotta, still doing her sniffing routine, then back at the flyer. Well, I want my leash and collar back, Nikki says sadly. I knew it was too good to be true, she adds, more to herself than anyone else. I'll give them back on Monday at school, Gavin says, scooping Carlotta up in his arms. Gavin feels like a real hero when he climbs the steps of his porch with Carlotta squirming in his arms. Richard is right behind him, probably not wanting to miss the hero's welcome his friend is about to receive. Before Richard can get the front door for Gavin, Uncle Vester opens it. When he sees them, his eyes grow big and his lips part, but no sound comes out. Then he yells, Myrtle, get in here! His voice brings Gavin's dad, back from posting flyers, and Gavin's mom running too. They stand there together, staring at Carlotta in stunned silence for a moment. It's as if they can't believe their eyes. Where did you find her? His mom finally asks while Aunt Myrtle takes the dog out of his arms and gives her a hug. Danielle walks in the door just then with a few leftover flyers in her hand. Even her mouth drops open at the sight of Carlotta. These two girls on Richard Street had her. They said they saved her from getting hit by a car, and that they didn't know she belonged to anyone because she didn't have a collar. It's a miracle, Aunt Myrtle says, a miracle. She takes Carlotta into the living room and sits down on the sofa. Uncle Vester walks over to Gavin and pats him on the back. His father stands there beaming. His mom smiles at him as well. Even Danielle is smiling at him. Now that's a real miracle. Well, Gavin, I think we need to do some settling up, Uncle Vester says. Gavin frowns, not sure what that means exactly. Uncle Vester takes out his wallet and extracts 2 10s. Here's what I owe you for walking Carlotta. He hands over one of the 10s, and this is what I owe you for finding Carlotta. He places the other 10 in Gavin's hand. Gavin stares at the richness in his possession and whispers, thank you. Wow, Richard says appreciatively. But before Gavin can savor his wealth, Danielle marches over and plucks one of the 10s out of his hand. Thanks, this belongs to me, she says, and struts off to her room. Gavin doesn't even mind. He is now finally free of his debt to his sister, Miss Danielle, Miss Know-It-All, Miss Just-Made Teenager status. Oh, how good it feels. Plus, he's got his own 10. This has been a great Saturday morning. Later, as he and Richard are gliding on their skateboard and scooter to Miller's Park, after all the goodbyes have been said to Aunt Myrtle and Uncle Vester, and, of course, dear Carlotta, and the real choo-choo has been handed over, Aunt Myrtle didn't even notice the difference. Gavin feels a strange little twinge, an odd feeling that he just might maybe, perhaps. No, it couldn't be. And yet, somehow he thinks he possibly could miss Carlotta. And that would make 3 miracles in one day, Gavin thinks, and smiles to himself. Then he pumps his foot against the concrete and sails past Richard toward the park. And that is the end of chapter 9. I hope you enjoyed Dog Days, and we'll see you next time.